Hello, this is Live with the Eczema Doc, and today we are talking about the essential labs that you need to uncover the root causes of your eczema. And the main theme I'm talking about is let's test and not guess about what the root causes of your eczema are. And this is so important because often I will come across people that I meet for the first time and I find out what they've been doing. And unfortunately, they've been treating themselves for parasites or heavy metals, and they don't even know if these are truly the root causes of their eczema. And this can often cause a problem because you may be actually addressing a problem that you don't have. So it is very important to test, not guess. And that's what we are talking about today. So we're going to break down all of the essential tests that I find very useful in the diagnosis of what the root causes of your eczema are. And that's how we truly get to healing the eczema for good by not just silencing the symptoms, but actually understanding what the root causes are. Okay. So we are going to break down what those root causes are. We're going to talk a little bit about why testing is so important. I'll break down the top 4 tests that I like to use when working with eczema patients, and then also understanding all the other tests that are available to us if I find that there are more root causes that we need to uncover. And why is this so important? And then how can you get some testing yourself? You can order the testing directly. You can also work with me and my team to order the test. And so there's lots of ways that we can really get down to the root cause of your eczema, okay? So, first off, why are we even doing this testing? This is not something we normally do in conventional medicine. We are not testing for the root causes of eczema. We're often, honestly, just the doctors are looking at your skin and saying, well, you've got eczema. Well, okay, here are some drugs that you can take topically that you can put topically on your skin, and then sometimes oral drugs and sometimes injectables. And nobody's really asking why you have this problem. Maybe, some doctors are sending you to an allergist to see if you have food allergies, but nobody is really going beyond that in the conventional model for the most part, unless you're dealing with an integrative dermatologist or a naturopathic doctor or a functional medicine doctor who really asks these questions. So, we really want to understand what those root causes are. In my practice, I've identified 6 top root causes that we really need to understand if these are playing a role for you. And of course, there are other root causes, but I do find that these are the top 6 root causes. And the first on my list is microbiome imbalances. And this can include any kind of microbiome imbalance, whether you have an overgrowth of bacteria, yeast, fungus, mold, maybe a parasite, maybe viral. So there's a lot of different microbiome imbalances that can be present, and we have to do some testing to understand, is this a problem for you? Often a patient will have a certain presentation that may signify, okay, this might be a problem. And that could be gut issues, it could be the presentation of how the skin looks. And that can lead me to understand, okay, this might be something we want to do some testing for. The next one on my list is toxic burden. And for toxic burden, this is really just toxins in our world that cause problems like heavy metals, environmental toxins, toxins that come from mold. And I do find that this is a big root cause of eczema in my practice. Leaky skin, unfortunately, there isn't much testing here, but with this one, this could be genetic. This could be because of environmental factors that you're just getting really permeable skin and just kind of getting this cycle of eczema that just keeps coming back. Leaky gut is, where we are having maybe multiple food sensitivities, food allergies, because there's a permeability in the gut because there's been so much inflammation in the gut. And this is something that we can absolutely test for, and we'll talk about that today. Then nutrition factors and lifestyle factors. For nutrition factors, we have, again, food sensitivities, food allergies. We have just optimizing the diet based on other root cause issues. And then lifestyle factors are the same. If we're finding other root cause issues, we may need to adjust the lifestyle. And then there's also just general lifestyle that we want to pay attention to. Okay. Now, what happens here is these root causes cause the symptoms of eczema that we experience, like the skin eruption, the itchiness, the redness, the dry skin, and then the skin infections that just keep coming back. But those are really just the symptoms. And in conventional medicine, that's kind of what we focus on, is just those symptoms. We really don't ask why. So in my practice, when I'm dealing with eczema and it's the number one thing I treat in my practice, I like to say, let's break that cycle and ditch the itch. So that cycle we need to address in two different ways. We do need to reduce those symptoms, but I like to do that naturally without the use of conventional medications. And then I like to address the root cause. So today we're going to be talking a lot about addressing that root cause and the testing that goes into that. Testing is not the only thing that helps me to identify what the root causes are. I also like to interview the patient, do a physical exam, and then also get journaling from the patient, where I actually get to see the skin, the poop, and everything that's going on in the patient's life. Labs can really give me a part of that picture. I do want to say the labs don't give me the entire picture. So sometimes people depend solely on labs. And for me, the labs might be 75% of the evaluation process in my practice. Okay, so let's start with food, because food is something that we put into our mouths 3 to 5 times a day. And one thing that you might get tested conventionally are food allergies. Now, sometimes people don't have a lot of food allergies, but unfortunately, they do have a lot of food sensitivities. And this is actually measuring something different. These are immunoglobulins that may actually be immunoglobulins that come up that don't give you this immediate reaction. They give you this maybe low level reaction, so you don't even recognize that you have these food sensitivities. They also might be delayed reaction. So you eat the food today and then that reaction doesn't come up until 3 whole days later. And this can really be the basis of chronic inflammation, which is what eczema is chronic inflammation, right? So food sensitivity is something that I do like to test for. Now, there is a caveat here. We can't just necessarily read the food sensitivity results and say, okay, now you have to avoid all of these foods. Unfortunately, with some eczema people, a lot of foods are coming up here. So we have to actually take the labs. We have to look at what the diet is showing us. We have to look at what the symptoms are. And then myself and a nutritionist on my team, we make the best decision for what we're going to do with these results. Now, we don't like people to be avoiding the food sensitivities for the rest of their lives, but we do like to avoid those top sensitivities while we are treating. And that's usually at the minimum a 3-month process, right? And, then we need to understand, okay, are there other foods that need to be avoided that aren't sensitivities, but they need to be avoided for other reasons, like you have dysbiosis or leaky gut. And so you cannot take these results, unfortunately, and just take them at face value. We may also have false negatives and false positives on this test, because you do have to have exposure to the food for at least 3 weeks prior to the test. And so, when some people say, well, no, you shouldn't trust food sensitivity testing, in some ways that this is true, but if you actually have a practitioner that's really knowledgeable about how to use these labs, then they can be very, very helpful. And I really don't recommend that you actually analyze this on your own and now you get super freaked out because every food on the planet is on this test for you, and now you just don't know what to do, and then you're overwhelmed. So I do recommend that you work with someone if you are getting food sensitivity testing. At Cleanbody, we have a couple of options. You can actually order this directly. We have a basic panel and a complete panel. But if you do work directly with us, we also have a lot of other panels that we might choose from depending on your specific case. Okay. So, but if you go to our website, and I'll be talking about a lot of labs today that you actually can order directly, you can go to cleanbody.health/labs and order them directly. And then it does come with a little mini consultation with me so that I can kind of just basically direct you in the right direction. I cannot give you any advice unless you become my patient. So that's one caveat there, but you can at least get the information as to, okay, this is where I maybe need to get started. So it can be a good place to start if you are thinking that foods might be a problem. Okay. So when we do this testing, and there's lots of different ways to test food sensitivity, but with this specific test that we offer through a direct order, we're measuring IgA, IgG, IgG4, and C3D. So these are several different factors that are involved in the food sensitivity process. And it just gives us a really complete look at what you might be sensitive to. Okay. All right, the next one on our list is the total tox burden assessment. And this is addressing that root cause of toxic burden. And as I mentioned earlier, there are three types of toxins that we might want to look into. That would be heavy metals, mold toxins, and environmental contaminants, things like pesticides, herbicides, VOCs. Unfortunately, we are being exposed to these toxins all the time. And unfortunately, I find that a lot of my patients do have a lot of these toxins floating around in their system. And we are basically collecting the urine for this test. Sometimes we just collect the urine and then we just see what's coming out. Sometimes we do give you things to elicit more toxins to mobilize into the urine so that we can see more of those toxins come out. And it just depends on the case. Okay. This is also available for direct order. But, one caveat there is that you really should have somebody working with you to understand, okay, what do I do with these lab results, right? Because now I find that I have these toxins. Well, the first thing you can do is you can really address these toxins in your lifestyle. So if you have a lot of exposure to nickel, for example, you can maybe, and I find that very frequently in my eczema patients, you can then go on a nickel-free diet, nickel-free, forks and spoons, nickel-free pots and pans, etc. So, it can inform your decisions about the decisions you make in your environment. But then how do you cleanse these toxins? That's where you really need to work with a practitioner. Okay. Now, the next one is a comprehensive gut health assessment. And this is, for me, this is kind of a no-brainer that every eczema patient really needs to get a gut health assessment. And we have a couple of different options at Cleanbody. The one that's available for direct order is called the Gut Zoomer. And we also use a number of other tests depending on what we're trying to find. Maybe I might actually want to add on a test that has a macroscopic exam for parasites, for example, or a culture, which this test doesn't have a culture. Okay. Now, in these tests, we're testing for good bugs and bad bugs. So, good bugs would be beneficial bacteria. These are the good guys that really help us to digest our food. They help our immune function. They have so many functions in the body. I like to call this our army. This is our army that protects us from the outside world and protects us from the toxins, even that can really put a burden on our system. And then the bad guys, and that would be things like parasites, candida, fungus, yeast, bacteria, etc. And this test and the tests that we use can really help us to identify, are these a problem? The other thing that it identifies are gut function. So, this is really great. We can see if you have good digestive enzymes. Do you have a lot of inflammation in your gut? Um, do you have leaky gut, that intestinal permeability, which is what happens when you have so much inflammation in your gut that the cells in your gut actually start to get leaky? And we also call it leaky gut. And that's how we sometimes get this immune activation or inflammation that causes eczema. So this can be, a big problem. And if we identify that you have leaky gut, then we can start treating it. So This test is so helpful. And I would say that in my eczema patients, most of the time we are finding a lot here. Your gut microbiome is related to your skin microbiome. Your gut health is related to your skin health. So, this is pretty much for me, this is a necessity for almost every eczema patient if there is the financial ability to order a comprehensive gut assessment. Okay. All right. And finally, we have to do a blood test. Now, this is similar to the blood test you might do with your doctor every year, but it is extremely comprehensive. So, you might be doing, let's say, nine different markers with your PCP. And on this test, I think we have over 100 markers that we might look at. Um, and it's just so extensive, telling us why there's an issue. So not just, oh, you have a thyroid problem, but why do you maybe have a thyroid problem? Or not just, you have high blood sugar, but oh, you also have insulin resistance. So it just helps us to explain why. And this health span assessment panel is one we can order, or if you work directly with us, we can kind of customize a panel for you as well. This is going to test hormone levels, organ function markers, nutrient deficiencies, markers of systemic inflammation, autoimmune markers. It is so comprehensive. It is the most comprehensive test you will ever do. So I love it. And if you work directly with us, again, we also can modify it for you based on what you are coming to us with. Now, how is getting these labs with your doctor different from getting them with a naturopathic or functional doctor like myself? Well, first of all, we look at different reference ranges. So we are actually looking for optimal function, not disease. And that's really a big difference there. Because when we're looking at disease, we're kind of looking at, okay, you're in a disease state now. It's time for medication, surgery, etc. And we are looking at this reference range that we're not ready for the medication time, but it's maybe, well, let's do some lifestyle nutrition and supplement work. And hopefully we can get you out of the woods. And that is the difference here. So I wanted to just kind of give you an example. There is a marker that's called the EGFR, and this is a filtration rate of your kidney. So I want you to think of your kidney like a pool filter, and imagine that pool filter is just taking out all the impurities so that we can have clean pool water and keeping all the good stuff that we need in the pool. And that's the same thing that our kidneys do, okay? So conventionally, your doctor is looking for that number to be above 60. And for me, I'm really looking for this number to be above 90. This is truly preventive medicine. If between 60 and 90, we start to do things to actually help the kidneys work better, that's preventive medicine. And often for my eczema patients, I don't necessarily see that their kidneys are malfunctioning completely, that they're in kidney failure, etc. I more so see that the optimal function isn't happening. So they are not drinking enough water. They have maybe early kidney stones. There's problems that we can already start to fix. And when we help the kidneys work better, the kidneys are one of your organs of detoxification, then we find that the skin gets better. So kidneys are one of those organs that are very important for an eczema case. And I normally don't hear doctors talking about the kidneys when they think about eczema. When you work directly with us, we may actually go so much deeper and look at so many more issues like Lyme disease. We might look at neurotransmitters. We might look deeper into mold and get nasal swabs. There's so many other labs we can do if you are actually working directly with us. So it just kind of depends on then what we find. But the labs I've gone through today, again, which are available for direct order, are ones that I would say for the most part, all eczema patients can benefit from getting those. And then some people actually need further advanced testing. Okay. So now let's go through some real patient journeys. What do labs really look like when I'm actually treating a patient? So Yahira was someone that came to me and she had been using Dupixent for 3 years. She had severe TSW and really severe eczema. Um, by the way, you can also be watching this on YouTube, on Instagram, and this is on my podcast as well. So if you're listening, I'll describe what I'm showing. But if you're watching this, definitely take a look at these pictures. So on day 0, Yahira had eczema all over her eyes, almost like a raccoon, around her mouth, neck, body, and really just all over her body. And only 1.5 months later, we see progress. And then 3 months later, we took her off Dupixent and she was doing pretty amazing. So let's look at the labs that we broke down for her. So in her initial blood test, we did find that her bilirubin levels were elevated by my standards. So the reference range for me, I like to be below zero point 0.4. And bilirubin builds up when your gallbladder is blocked and really can't drain properly. So this is one I find very frequently in my eczema patients. So for me, this you know told me, okay, we need to give bile support. I like you to think of bile like a bus that carries toxins out of the body. And so, bile is super duper important in an eczema case. And I do find that bile is often implicated in the process. We ran a gut zoomer and we found a lot of gut inflammation. So we did have to take measures to lower that gut inflammation. We also did find that she had poor bile acid. So that matched that bilirubin test that we did. We found that she had leaky gut, immune activation, and gluten sensitivity. So she had to stop eating gluten. We had to heal that leaky gut using supplements and diet. Okay. We did find that she had dysbiosis. She had an overgrowth of some bad bacteria and low amounts of her good bacteria. And so we had to fix that problem with probiotics and addressing the dysbiosis. And she, also had a positive autoimmune disease screen. Now, not every eczema case will have a positive autoimmune disease screen, but unfortunately she did. And so it was something we also had to address. And how did we address this? Well, we addressed this with all the other issues that we found. So we had to heal the gut in order to address that autoimmune marker. For autoimmune disease, and conventionally, we often see that, okay, there's nothing you can do, just give some medication. But naturopathically, we have learned that 70% of all autoimmune disease is really due to environmental factors like toxic chemicals, dietary components, gut dysbiosis, infections, and even stress. So there is absolutely something we can do about this. Only 30% of autoimmune disease is genetic. So 70% of this we actually can do something about, okay? She also had high eosinophils, very common in eczema too, so very high allergy process. She had very low vitamin D, also very common in eczema. Okay, so we, cleared all of this for her. We gave her the nutrients she needed. We cleaned up her gut, and then her eczema got better and severe eczema, and just doing beautifully at the end here. Jimmy was somebody that I met who ended up getting eczema as an adult, and he just kind of had no idea where it was coming from. We did some testing and we found out that there was black mold in his home that he had recently purchased. Unfortunately, he had to move out, get the mold cleaned, and we had to cleanse his body of the mold, and we cleared it. And if you are looking at the pictures here, you can see he's super happy and his skin is looking really great. And so that was another root cause we had to uncover, is mold. This is a 5-year-old. And with this 5-year-old in the first picture, if you're listening to this, I'll describe. This 5-year-old has, scratches, redness, bleeding all over her back, all over her arms. And 5 months later, we see that her back is completely clear. And we had to address food sensitivities, leaky gut, dysbiosis, poor bile production. Bile production was actually huge for this little one. And she wasn't pooping. And when she was pooping, her poops were really like a very light color. And so we had to actually promote more bile production. And we did see that in her labs. This is a 1-year-old, and what we're seeing here is eczema all over the ankles, which is a common presentation in younger infants or toddlers. And then we're seeing that the ankle is completely clear. For this little one, the big one that we actually found was mold and heavy metals. So we had to clear these from this little one. And she did have to do a diet where she did restrict because she did have food sensitivities and allergies, unfortunately. All right. And we have a patient here who has a similar presentation to Yahira that we talked about earlier. She's got the raccoon eyes. She's got the redness around the mouth, on the neck, on the wrists. Her tongue is super coated. Now, that tongue being coated tells me a little bit about gut and that we have to do things about the gut. Also, by the way, whenever I see eczema around the mouth, I often think gut as well and foods that we might need to address. For this woman, we found that she had a Shiga like toxin, E. coli, that we found in her gut, and we actually did have to address this. Now, I don't typically address this using conventional medicine. I address this using herbs and other supplements to support the gut health. And at her final visit, she's looking beautiful, and she actually just had a baby. So, something she also had wanted to do. And by the end of the program, she was feeling so healthy that she could do it. Okay. So, I wanted to just give you a little taste of what it looks like when you actually get to the root cause, when you actually really ask the right questions and get the right evaluation. I think that's important. And unfortunately, in conventional medicine, we're not getting any evaluation. We're really just getting an evaluation of what drug is the best for us. And so that's why I wanted to focus on this today, because the labs are very instrumental in my practice. I will say they're not the only mechanism of evaluating a case, but I would say they are a big mechanism of evaluating a case. So, if you are interested in ordering labs directly, we do have the 4 labs that I mentioned today. If you use the code um, oop, lab IG, you'll get $100 off. So you can go to cleanbody.health/lab, and you can get $100 off there if you use that code. If you are interested in, getting evaluated instead so that I can help evaluate which labs are most important for you to get, you can also consider booking an eczema root cause consultation. You can get 10% off by using the code IG10, okay? And if you are interested in getting my free eczema relief guide, if you're interested in getting my free eczema root cause assessment so you can dive a little bit deeper before you think about labs, DM me or comment labs, and I will send all this information to you. Okay. All right. I would love to open it up to questions now. And our topic for today is lab testing for eczema. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and type into the chat box. You can type anything you would like. We are talking about eczema for labs for eczema today. But if you have any other questions, please go ahead and type those as well. So let me go back and see if there are any questions. So let's see. Can you post this later? Yes, I am going to be posting this later. And if you go to the post that I made today and you comment labs, I will send this live plus my blog. So if you'd rather read all of this information, you could read it instead. And so I see that someone commented here, labs. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to get this log afterwards. So just DM me right now and say labs, and then I'll send it to you if you're interested. So Gabby and Lily and Kiana, just DM me labs, and then I can send that to you directly, okay? Because I think I won't be able to see this once my live is over, okay? Yes, please post this later so I can finish watching since I'm at work right now. Great content. Okay. And also, by the way, this is my podcast as well. So this will get posted in a couple weeks on my podcast as well. So if you haven't followed my podcast yet, it's Live with the Eczema Doc, and it's on all podcast platforms. But all the lives that I do are also posted here on Instagram and on YouTube. So you can check them out in any of those places. And I'm happy to answer any questions for you guys right now. So please go ahead and type into the comments box if you have any questions so that I can answer any and all questions you have on this topic. Again, we're talking about labs for eczema. And if you miss this, just go ahead and DM me right now, labs, and I will send you all the information. I know a lot of us have to get back to work, and I don't see any questions coming in, but thank you so much for joining me today. If you can think of any last minute questions, please go ahead and just type in the chat box, and I'm happy to answer that right now. Otherwise, I will hear from you hopefully, and I will be able to answer any questions through DM. Okay. I don't see anything coming through. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining me today. And I hope you have a wonderful